Step aside, ma'am. This aircraft is preparing for its owner. Cleaning staff should use the service entrance. The pilot's dismissive hand doesn't waver as he blocks the boarding stairs. Melissa Reynolds stands motionless, her Hermes briefcase hanging from one hand, boarding documents in the other. The early morning sun glints off the jet's fuselage, her company logo clearly visible on the tail. The pilot's smirk grows as he looks her up and down. Unless you have written authorization from Dr. Reynolds, I'll have to ask you to leave the tarmac immediately. She opens her mouth to respond when a second crew member appears. Any problems, Captain Harrison? Will she immediately reveal her identity, or is there a strategic advantage to this case of mistaken identity? The day begins with promise for Melissa. Her alarm chirps at 5:30 a.m., giving her ample time to prepare for the crucial Seattle meeting. The acquisition of TechVision could propel Reynolds Technologies into the stratosphere of industry leaders. Everything must go perfectly. The car service arrives exactly on schedule, a sleek black Escalade that glides through the pre-dawn Manhattan streets. Her driver, an older gentleman with salt and pepper hair, glances at her through the rearview mirror. Dr. Reynolds? I recognized your name from the reservation. Just saw you in Fortune's 40 Under 40. Congratulations. Melissa offers a polite smile. Thank you. That was unexpected. The drive to Teterboro Airport passes quickly. When they arrive at the private terminal, the glass and steel structure gleams in the rising sun. Inside, the terminal bustles with early morning activity. Executives in tailored suits clutch coffee cups and briefcases, preparing for their own journeys. At the counter, a white businessman receives effusive service. The staff members smile, never faltering as she processes his documents with swift efficiency. Have a wonderful flight, Mr. Whitman. Your usual scotch will be waiting on board. When it's Melissa's turn, the same staff member's smile dims slightly. Her eyes flick between the reservation and Melissa's face twice. ID, please, she says flatly. Melissa provides her license. The woman studies it, then looks back at Melissa. I'll need to see that again, please. Melissa maintains her composure, though her jaw tightens momentarily. She's been here before. The subtle questioning of her belonging in these spaces. Across the terminal, Captain James Harrison observes the interaction. His eyes narrow as he takes in Melissa's impeccably tailored suit, her natural hair styled in a sleek updo. He leans toward his co-pilot. The security guard approaches Melissa next. Random screening, ma'am. Please step this way. She complies without complaint, though she's passed through this terminal twice monthly for the past year. As she collects her belongings afterward and walks toward the tarmac, Harrison's gaze follows her. He mutters something to his co-pilot, who chuckles uncomfortably. What prejudices are already forming in the pilot's mind before they've exchanged a single word? Melissa strides across the tarmac, her heels clicking against the concrete. The morning air carries the scent of jet fuel and possibility. Ahead, her Gulfstream G650 waits, its sleek white body emblazoned with the Reynolds Tech logo, a stylized RT in blue and silver. Captain Harrison intercepts her at the bottom of the boarding stairs. He positions himself directly in her path, feet planted wide, arms crossed over his chest. His captain's bars gleam in the sunlight. "Excuse me, ma'am," he says, his voice deliberately slow as if speaking to someone who might struggle with English. "This is a restricted area. Are you lost?" Melissa stops, maintaining a professional distance. "No, I'm not lost. I'm here for my 8:30 departure." Harrison's eyes narrow. "This aircraft is preparing for a private departure. The passenger terminal is back that way." He gestures vaguely behind her without taking his eyes off her face. She reaches into her bag and produces her boarding documents, extending them toward him. "Here are my boarding papers. I believe everything's in order." Harrison barely glances at them. "Ma'am, this is the private aircraft of Dr. Reynolds. Unless you have specific authorization—" "As you can see," Melissa interrupts, pointing to the logo on the jet, "this is a Reynolds Technologies aircraft. I am—" "Listen," Harrison cuts her off. I don't know how you got onto the tarmac, but this plane is preparing for its owner. I'm going to have to ask you to leave immediately. Melissa takes a deep breath. I believe there's been a misunderstanding. Before she can finish, Harrison raises his hand and waves over a security guard. We have an unauthorized person attempting to access a private aircraft. The guard approaches swiftly, hand hovering near his holster. Melissa reaches for her phone to show additional identification, but Harrison barks, "Keep your hands where I can see them." The co-pilot watches from the cockpit doorway, his expression uncomfortable but silent. Across the tarmac, 3 white executives climb the stairs to their waiting jets without interruption. No one questions their right to be there. No one demands their identification. "Step away from my aircraft," Harrison demands, emphasizing the possessive. His stance widens, claiming more space on the tarmac, establishing dominance. Melissa remains composed despite the growing audience of ground crew and nearby passengers. If you would just call Reynolds Tech headquarters— Ma'am, Harrison interrupts, his tone dripping with condescension. I fly Dr. Reynolds regularly. I know who the owner is. The terminal manager hurries across the tarmac, a thin man with a permanently worried expression and a clipboard clutched to his chest. Harrison immediately turns to him. We have a trespasser attempting to board, he reports before Melissa can speak. She's trying to access Dr. Reynolds' jet. The manager doesn't ask for her side first. Instead, he immediately aligns with Harrison. Can I see some identification, please? Melissa produces her driver's license and corporate ID. The manager studies them, his expression growing increasingly skeptical. He glances from the IDs to her face and back again. These look unusual, he says finally. Could be fake. For the first time, a flash of anger breaks through Melissa's calm exterior. Are you suggesting my government-issued ID is counterfeit? Harrison snorts. Anyone can buy designer clothes and fake credentials. His eyes sweep dismissively over her Armani suit and Christian Louboutin heels. Happens all the time. People trying to sneak onto private jets for Instagram photos. A small crowd has gathered now. Ground crew pause their work. Pilots from nearby aircraft observe with curiosity. 2 passengers waiting to board another jet whisper to each other, pointing subtly. Perhaps we should wait for the real Dr. Reynolds to arrive, the manager suggests with false reasonableness. That would clear everything up, wouldn't it? Melissa feels the weight of every stare. The familiar burn of public humiliation creeps up her neck, but she refuses to show it. Years of being the only black woman in boardrooms, at conferences, in first-class lounges, all have prepared her for this moment. I'd like to make a phone call, she says evenly. The manager and Harrison exchange glances. Fine, the manager concedes, but don't leave this area. As Melissa steps away, phone in hand, she overhears Harrison speaking to his co-pilot in a voice just loud enough to carry. Can you believe these people? Always trying to be something they're not. The co-pilot shifts uncomfortably but says nothing. Melissa's fingers tighten around her phone. Her reflection in its black screen shows a woman at a crossroads. She has absorbed slights like these for years, letting them slide for the sake of professionalism, for moving forward, for not being labeled difficult. Not today. Melissa walks 20 paces away, far enough for privacy but close enough to remain in view of the watchful eyes. Her spine stays straight, shoulders back, chin lifted. She will not slouch. She will not hide. She will not become smaller to make them comfortable. This isn't the first time. Images flash through her mind like a painful slideshow. The investor who handed her his empty coffee cup, assuming she was the assistant, not the CEO pitching for millions. The hotel clerk who directed her to the service elevator when she arrived for a keynote address. The countless times she's been asked, "No, but who's really in charge?" Each time she swallowed the indignity and moved forward. Each time she told herself it was strategic. Pick your battles, focus on the bigger picture, success is the best revenge. But somewhere along the way, silence became complicity. And now, watching Harrison smirk at her from across the tarmac, she makes a silent vow. This ends today. She dials her executive assistant. Daniel answers on the first ring. "Good morning, Dr. Reynolds." "Daniel," she says, her voice calm and measured despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. "Implementation protocol Foxtrot Alpha Alpha. Immediate." There's a beat of silence as Daniel processes the significance of this code. Then, with absolute clarity, "On it. 17 minutes. Captain James Harrison, Terminal Manager." She glances at his name badge. "Scott Phillips." "Understood. Do you need immediate extraction?" "No. Proceed as planned." She ends the call and immediately dials another number. Her company's legal counsel answers promptly. "Sandra, documentation phase. Teterboro. Yes, again." She articulates the confrontation with precision, recalling exact quotes, identifying witnesses, noting timestamps. The lawyer on the other end takes it all down without comment. "Do you want us to intervene now?" Sandra asks when Melissa finishes. "No, full procedural response." Harrison approaches, his patience visibly thinning. He makes an exaggerated gesture for her to end the call. Melissa deliberately turns away from him, giving her back to his authority. "And Sandra, make sure the board recording starts immediately." She ends the call just as Harrison reaches her. His face has reddened with frustration, a vein pulsing at his temple. "This has gone on long enough," he says. "You need to leave the secure area now." Melissa slides her phone into her pocket and faces him fully. Something in her expression makes him take a half step back. The woman who stood before him minutes ago, accommodating, calm, careful, has vanished. In her place stands someone entirely different. Someone with the steady eyes of a predator who has just spotted vulnerable prey. "You're right about one thing, Captain Harrison," she says, her voice low enough that only he can hear. "This has gone on long enough." Two airport security officers approach, their uniforms crisp in the morning light. One is older, gray at the temples, with the weary expression of a man who's seen everything. The other is younger, eager, his hand resting casually near his holstered taser. Harrison watches their approach with undisguised satisfaction. His authority, momentarily challenged, will now be reinforced by men with badges and weapons. "Is there a problem here?" the older officer asks, addressing Harrison rather than Melissa. "This woman is attempting unauthorized access to a private aircraft," Harrison explains, gesturing dismissively in Melissa's direction. "She's refusing to leave the secure area." The younger officer steps forward, his hand shifting to rest more firmly on his taser. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to come with us to the security office." "I'd advise you to remove your hand from your weapon," Melissa says, her voice carrying a new edge. The officer blinks, surprised by her directness, but doesn't comply. "We've had reports of attempted unauthorized boarding," the older officer continues. "We need to question you about that." "I'm exactly where I should be. At my aircraft," Melissa replies. Harrison laughs, the sound sharp and dismissive. "Lady, I've flown Dr. Reynolds for 3 years. He's a respected businessman." The pronoun mistake hangs in the air. Melissa's lips curve into a subtle smile, unnoticed by everyone except those watching closely. "This is becoming disruptive," the younger officer says. "You need to come with us now." He reaches for Melissa's arm. His colleague follows suit, each taking an elbow to escort her away. "You are currently placing hands on the owner of that aircraft," Melissa states. "I suggest you reconsider." The officers exchange glances but maintain their grip. Years of training have taught them to trust the word of uniformed pilots over civilians, especially civilians who don't match their expectations of private jet owners. "She's delusional," Harrison encourages them. "Get her out of here before the real owner arrives." The terminal manager checks his watch, anxiety creeping into his expression. "The scheduled departure is in 20 minutes. This needs to be resolved quickly." The officers begin to steer Melissa toward the terminal building. The security officers guide Melissa across the tarmac, their grips firm but not painful. She doesn't resist but walks with deliberate slowness, maintaining her dignity with each step. "This is now unlawful detention and will be documented as such," she informs them, her voice carrying in the morning air. The younger officer tightens his grip slightly. The older one looks increasingly uncertain. Behind them, Harrison calls to the ground crew who hover nearby, watching the spectacle. "Begin pre-flight checks. We'll depart as soon as Dr. Reynolds arrives." The ground crew hesitates, looking between Harrison and the woman being escorted away. "May I access my phone to resolve this matter?" Melissa asks the officers. The older officer nods reluctantly. Slowly. Keeping her movements measured, Melissa retrieves her phone with her free hand. She opens her calendar app and holds the screen up for them to see. "Teterboro departure, 8:30 a.m., G650, Captain Harrison piloting," she reads aloud. "This is my scheduled flight." The younger officer's grip loosens slightly as he peers at the screen. He looks to his partner, uncertainty creeping into his expression. "That doesn't prove anything," the terminal manager interjects, hurrying to catch up with them. "Anyone could create a fake calendar entry." Melissa turns her attention to Harrison, who stands watching with arms crossed and satisfaction etched across his features. "Who exactly are you expecting to pilot today?" she asks him directly. Harrison straightens, pleased to have the opportunity to expose her deception. "Dr. Marcus Reynolds, CEO of Reynolds Technologies." "And you've met Dr. Reynolds personally?" Melissa queries, her tone innocently curious. "Many times," Harrison boasts with absolute confidence. "He's about my height, distinguished gray at the temples. A real gentleman." Melissa's eyebrow arches slightly at the complete fabrication. She's never met this man before today, and she certainly doesn't have gray temples. The security officers exchange glances, sensing the shifting dynamic but uncertain how to proceed. The terminal manager fidgets with his clipboard, sweat beading on his forehead despite the cool morning air. Before anyone can speak again, the distinctive sound of tires on tarmac draws their attention. A black town car speeds toward them, driving faster than regulations permit in the restricted area. The town car stops with precision, its tires barely squealing against the concrete. The driver's door opens and a man emerges, tall, lean, in a perfectly tailored charcoal suit. Daniel Chen, Melissa's executive assistant for the past 5 years, steps onto the tarmac carrying a leather portfolio. Harrison straightens, his expression shifting to anticipation. This must be the real Dr. Reynolds arriving, male, as he expected, though not matching the description he fabricated moments ago. Daniel walks directly toward Melissa, ignoring the security officers, Harrison, and the terminal manager. His stride is purposeful, his expression professionally neutral. "Dr. Reynolds," he addresses Melissa with crisp formality, "I have the documents you requested." The security officers freeze, their hands still on Melissa's arms. Harrison's satisfied expression falters, confusion taking its place. "Nice try," Harrison recovers quickly. "This is clearly a coordinated attempt to—" Daniel opens the leather portfolio and hands Melissa several documents. She reviews them briefly, then presents them to the security officers and terminal manager. "My FAA credentials, aircraft registration in my name, and identification confirming I am Dr. Melissa Reynolds, owner of Reynolds Technologies and this aircraft." The terminal manager's complexion pales as he reviews the documents. The older security officer releases Melissa's arm immediately. His younger colleague follows suit a moment later, stepping back as if burned. Harrison pushes forward, grabbing the papers from the terminal manager's hands. "These could be elaborate fakes," he insists, desperation creeping into his voice. "I know Dr. Reynolds." Melissa straightens her jacket, smoothing away the wrinkles left by the officer's grip. "Clearly you don't," she replies evenly. "And now you never will, at least not as his pilot." For the first time, uncertainty flickers across Harrison's face. The implications of his error begin to penetrate his confidence. "Daniel," Melissa addresses her assistant without breaking eye contact with Harrison, "please inform the backup flight crew they're needed immediately." "Already done," Daniel responds. "They're clearing security now, part of the Foxtrot Alpha Alpha protocol." Harrison looks between them, realization dawning that this situation is spiraling far beyond a simple misunderstanding. Something more significant is happening, something carefully orchestrated. Melissa stands at her full height now, no longer making herself smaller to accommodate others' comfort. The early morning sun illuminates her features, highlighting the shift in her demeanor from accommodating professional to commanding authority. The security officers back away, muttering apologies. The terminal manager steps forward, his clipboard clutched to his chest like a shield. "Dr. Reynolds, please accept my sincere apologies for this unfortunate misunderstanding," he stammers. "If there's anything we can do to—" "We'll address your terminal's protocols later, Mr. Phillips," Melissa interrupts, her tone making it clear this conversation is far from over. Harrison remains planted in place, clinging to his rapidly disintegrating narrative. "There must be some mistake in the paperwork," he insists, though his voice has lost its earlier confidence. Melissa turns to face him directly for the first time since this confrontation began. The tarmac falls silent as she studies him, her gaze analytical and unrushed. "Captain James Harrison," she begins, her voice carrying effortlessly across the space between them. "ATP certification number 285743, 3 safety violations in the past 5 years, all quietly resolved." Harrison's mouth falls open slightly, his eyes widening. The specific knowledge of his pilot certification number and record cannot be dismissed as lucky guesswork. "How did you—" "Your last recertification," Melissa continues as if he hadn't spoken, "was supervised by Chief Examiner Wilson, who noted concerns about your interpersonal communication skills but passed you anyway." Complete silence falls across the tarmac. Even the distant sound of jet engines seems to dim, as everyone realizes that Melissa has access to information no ordinary jet owner would possess. The security officers exchange alarmed glances. The terminal manager's clipboard slips from his grasp, clattering against the concrete. Melissa takes 3 measured steps toward Harrison, closing the distance between them to conversational range. When she speaks again, her voice is lower but no less clear. "Perhaps I should introduce myself properly, Dr. Melissa Reynolds, chairwoman of the Federal Aviation Administration's Diversity and Compliance Board." The blood drains from Harrison's face as the magnitude of his error becomes clear. This isn't just about denying a passenger boarding. This is about discriminating against a federal regulatory official with direct oversight of his career. "The same board," Melissa continues, "that oversees all pilot certifications, investigates discrimination complaints, and has the authority to ground pilots pending investigation." Daniel approaches, extracting another document from his portfolio. Melissa takes it without looking away from Harrison's increasingly ashen face. "As of this moment, you are not authorized to operate any aircraft until a full investigation into this incident is completed," she states, signing the document with a pen Daniel provides. "Your privileges are temporarily suspended, effective immediately." She hands the signed order to Harrison, who takes it automatically, his hands trembling slightly. The terminal manager steps forward, desperation evident in his voice. "Dr. Reynolds, please allow us to—" "Your terminal will also be subject to a complete compliance review," Melissa cuts him off. "Expect my team within 48 hours. Harrison finally breaks, his professional demeanor crumbling entirely. "You can't do this. It was a simple misunderstanding." Melissa's expression remains impassive, but her words land with precision. "No, Captain Harrison, it was textbook discrimination, witnessed by multiple parties against a federal regulatory official. That's not a misunderstanding. That's a career-ending mistake." As if summoned by her words, 2 pilots in uniform approach from the terminal, carrying their flight bags. They greet Melissa with appropriate professional respect. "Dr. Reynolds, we're ready when you are," the lead pilot says. Harrison watches in stunned disbelief as Melissa nods to the new crew, then turns toward the boarding stairs of her jet. Daniel walks ahead, carrying her briefcase along with his portfolio. At the top of the stairs, Melissa pauses. She turns, looking down at Harrison, who remains frozen in place, holding his suspension order. "You don't recognize power when it doesn't look like you," she says, her voice carrying clearly in the morning air. "That's why you no longer have any." She steps into her jet, the door closing behind her with pneumatic finality. Melissa's jet climbs into the clear blue sky, banking gently toward Seattle. On the tarmac below, Harrison remains motionless, the suspension order clutched in his hand, watching as his career evaporates into the jet wash. 1 week later, the executive boardroom of Atlantic Charter Private Aviation hums with tense energy. Floor-to-ceiling windows offer panoramic views of Manhattan, but no one appreciates the vista today. 12 board members sit around a gleaming mahogany table, their expressions grim. At the head sits CEO Victor Pearson, his normally ruddy complexion ashen. "Play it again," he instructs the company's general counsel. The large screen on the wall illuminates with security footage from Teterboro. The silent video shows the entire confrontation between Harrison and Dr. Reynolds. Though there's no audio, Harrison's dismissive body language speaks volumes. This footage has been viewed over 4 million times on social media, the PR director reports. Every major news outlet has covered it. The hashtag #FlyingWhileBlack is trending nationally. Harrison sits at the far end of the table, no longer in uniform. His blue suit looks rumpled, as if he's slept in it. Dark circles shadow his eyes. "Our legal position is precarious at best," the general counsel continues, clicking to a new slide in her presentation. "Captain Harrison didn't just discriminate against a passenger, he discriminated against the one person who can shut down our entire operation." The slide displays the FAA's official notice of investigation into Atlantic Charter's compliance with anti-discrimination regulations. The document bears Melissa Reynolds' signature. "Teams of FAA investigators arrived at Teterboro yesterday," the operations director adds. "They're reviewing every record, interviewing all personnel, examining every complaint ever filed." Harrison leans forward. "It was a misunderstanding. How was I supposed to know?" "That's enough!" Pearson slams his hand on the table. "You didn't just make a mistake, Harrison. You've potentially destroyed this company." At the FAA headquarters in Washington, D.C., Melissa sits at her desk reviewing a thick folder of discrimination complaints against Atlantic Charter. Her office is spacious but practical, decorated with framed degrees and awards recognizing her contributions to aviation safety and equity. An aide enters with another stack of files. "These just came in from our field office. 27 more complaints against Atlantic Charter over the past 5 years, all buried at the regional level." Melissa nods, unsurprised. "Add them to the investigation file." On a nearby screen, a news anchor reports, "The incident has sparked a nationwide conversation about discrimination in private aviation. Dr. Reynolds, who made history as the youngest person ever appointed to chair an FAA board, has called for a comprehensive review of the industry's practices." The footage cuts to Melissa at a press conference, her posture impeccable, her words measured and precise. "This isn't about one incident," she states to the assembled reporters. "It's about a pattern that has been ignored for too long. Every passenger deserves equal treatment regardless of race, gender, or appearance." 2 years earlier, Melissa sits in the Oval Office as the president signs her appointment papers. "The FAA needs someone who understands both the technical aspects of aviation and the human element," the president says. "Your experience as both an industry leader and someone who has faced discrimination gives you a unique perspective." Melissa thinks of all the times she's been dismissed, underestimated, mistaken for support staff rather than the CEO of a technology empire. "I'll use that perspective to create meaningful change," she promises. Back in Atlantic Charter's boardroom, the legal team delivers its final assessment. "We recommend terminating Captain Harrison immediately," the lead attorney states. "It won't solve all our problems, but it demonstrates our commitment to addressing the issue." "This is outrageous," Harrison protests, rising to his feet. 25 years of service, and you're throwing me under the bus for one misunderstanding?" "A misunderstanding?" The HR director's voice is incredulous. "You told her to use the service entrance. You claimed to know Dr. Reynolds personally and described him as a man with gray temples. You accused her of fabricating federal credentials. This wasn't a misunderstanding, it was discrimination, plain and simple. You've placed this entire company at risk, Pearson adds, his voice tight with controlled fury. The FAA could revoke our operating certificate. Do you understand what that means? 4,000 jobs, billions in contracts, all because you couldn't believe a black woman might own a private jet. The board votes unanimously. Harrison's termination is effective immediately. Security waits to escort him from the building. As he's led out, a junior staff member approaches with a small box. "Your personal effects, sir," she says, not meeting his eyes. The box contains photos from his desk, his logbook, and his pilot wings, removed from his uniform. The wings catch the light as Harrison takes the box, the gold emblem that has defined his identity for decades, now just a piece of metal in a cardboard container. At the Seattle headquarters of Reynolds Technologies, Melissa concludes her meeting with Tech Vision executives. The acquisition is moving forward despite her delayed arrival last week. As the room clears, her general counsel remains behind. Atlantic Charter has terminated Harrison, she informs Melissa. They're implementing company-wide bias training and have reached out about a potential settlement. Melissa nods. It's a start. But this was never about one pilot or one company. On her tablet, she reviews the draft of new FAA regulations, requiring bias training for all pilot certifications and renewals. The document represents months of work, accelerated by the high-profile incident. Schedule the congressional hearing, she instructs her assistant. It's time to push this forward. News montages play across screens nationwide. Atlantic Charter Aviation faces federal investigation following discrimination incident. FAA announces comprehensive review of private aviation industry practices. Congressional Transportation Committee to hold hearings on discrimination in aviation. Captain James Harrison, the pilot at the center of the controversy, has had his ATP certificate suspended pending a formal hearing. In his suburban New Jersey home, Harrison sits alone in his darkened living room, the television casting blue light across his features as he watches his career and reputation disintegrate in real time. On the coffee table, a half-empty bottle of scotch and his pilot's license, possibly for the last time. His phone buzzes with a text from a former colleague. Hearing scheduled. FAA doesn't lose these cases. Get a good lawyer. Harrison turns off the phone and pours another drink. Will Atlantic Charter's attempts to mitigate damage be enough, or is Melissa planning something far more sweeping than punishing one pilot and one company? The FAA hearing room embodies formal austerity. Wood-paneled walls surround a U-shaped table where 5 officials sit in high-backed chairs. American flags stand at attention behind them. The room smells of furniture polish and consequence. Harrison enters wearing his only suit that isn't a pilot's uniform. The navy blue jacket hangs slightly loose. He's lost weight in the 3 weeks since the incident. Beside him walks Martin Geller, an attorney specializing in aviation law, whose services cost more per hour than Harrison now earns in a week. The gallery holds a small audience: 2 journalists, representatives from Atlantic Charter, and several FAA officials observing the proceedings. Harrison avoids their gazes as he takes his seat at the respondents' table. The central door opens, and Melissa enters with 2 colleagues. She wears a charcoal suit with subtle pinstripes, her FAA credentials displayed on a lanyard. Harrison stiffens in his chair, watching as she takes her place at the panel table. The chief hearing officer, a stern woman with silver-streaked hair, calls the room to order. This hearing will determine whether Captain James Harrison's airline transport pilot certification should be permanently revoked, following allegations of discriminatory conduct and violations of FAA regulations. Harrison's attorney places a reassuring hand on his arm, but the gesture provides little comfort. Dr. Reynolds has recused herself from voting due to personal involvement, but remains present to provide testimony, the hearing officer explains. The proceedings begin with clinical efficiency. The panel reviews Harrison's complete flight record displayed on monitors visible to everyone in the room. 25 years of service scrolls by. Thousands of flight hours, dozens of aircraft types, certifications, and recertifications. Then come the incidents. 3 safety violations in the past 5 years, the technical examiner notes, all resolved with minimal consequences. Let the record reflect that these were minor infractions, Harrison's attorney interjects. None jeopardized passenger safety. The examiner continues as if he hadn't spoken. We've also discovered 7 previously unreported incidents involving passenger complaints. Harrison shifts uncomfortably as these previously buried reports appear on screen. Complaints from passengers with names like Rodriguez, Washington, Kim, all describing treatment markedly different from what white passengers received. The terminal security footage plays next. Without audio, Harrison's body language appears even more dismissive, his gestures more aggressive. The panel watches in silence. His former first officer testifies via video link. Captain Harrison often made comments about female and minority passengers, he admits reluctantly. I should have reported it, but... His voice trails off, heavy with regret for his own complicity. When Harrison finally speaks, desperation edges his voice. 25 years of service should count for something. One mistake shouldn't erase a lifetime of work. The panel chairman leans forward, her expression unyielding. 25 years of service makes this behavior less excusable, not more. You've had ample time to learn appropriate conduct. The deliberation takes less than 30 minutes. Harrison stands as the panel returns, his legs unsteady beneath him. This panel finds that Captain James Harrison has demonstrated conduct unbecoming of an FAA certificate holder, shown discriminatory behavior incompatible with safety culture requirements, and violated multiple sections of the Federal Aviation Regulations. The chairwoman's voice is firm, without malice but without mercy. The recommendation is unanimous, permanent revocation of ATP certification. The words hit Harrison like physical blows. Permanent. Revocation. His identity for 25 years, stripped away in minutes. Surrender your license to the clerk, the chairwoman instructs. Harrison reaches into his jacket pocket with trembling fingers. The plastic card has lived next to his heart for decades. He places it on the table before the clerk, who slides it into an envelope without ceremony. As he turns to leave the hearing room, Harrison's eyes meet Melissa's. He expects triumph, perhaps gloating. Instead, he finds only calm acknowledgement. She offers a single professional nod, not forgiveness, but recognition that justice has been served. It is somehow worse than anger would have been. Harrison exits the hearing room, his footsteps echoing in the marble hallway. Behind him, the door closes with a soft click that sounds to his ears like the final cutting of his wings. Headlines flash across screens nationwide, documenting the ripple effects of what media outlets have dubbed the Reynolds incident. FAA launches comprehensive investigation into discrimination in private aviation. Atlantic Charter implements mandatory anti-bias training for all staff. Congressional hearing on aviation discrimination set for next week. In a wood-paneled hearing room on Capitol Hill, Melissa sits before a semicircle of lawmakers. Camera flashes punctuate her testimony as she speaks with measured authority. This incident highlights a systemic problem, she explains, her voice carrying through the chamber. Our investigation has uncovered hundreds of similar complaints that were dismissed or buried. This isn't about one pilot or one company. It's about an industry culture that has gone unchallenged for too long. Senators and representatives from both parties listen intently. For once, this isn't a partisan issue. Discrimination in federally regulated industries concerns everyone. We're proposing new regulations requiring comprehensive bias training for all pilot certifications and renewals, Melissa continues. Additionally, we're establishing an independent review board to handle discrimination complaints directly, bypassing the internal channels that have failed passengers repeatedly. In a gleaming conference room at Atlantic Charter headquarters, executives sit through mandatory training sessions. The corporate culture that once dismissed soft skills as secondary now recognizes them as essential to survival. The Reynolds Protocol will be implemented across all our operations, the new chief diversity officer explains to rows of pilots, flight attendants, and ground staff. Every employee will complete this training annually with additional sessions for customer-facing personnel. On screen, statistics reveal the stark reality. Complaints of discrimination in private aviation have surged 340% since Melissa's incident made national news. Not because incidents have increased, but because passengers now believe reporting might actually make a difference. At Teterboro, new management transforms the terminal's operations. Security protocols now include explicit anti-bias procedures. Staff undergoes regular training. The customer service counter features a diverse team, a visible signal of changing times. From a distance, Harrison watches planes take off and land. He sits in his car in the airport parking lot, now employed driving a high-end airport shuttle service, the closest he can get to aviation with his credentials revoked. The irony isn't lost on him. He now serves the very passengers he once judged unworthy of respect. A sleek private jet climbs into the sky above him, its distinctive paint scheme identifying it as a Reynolds Technologies aircraft. He watches until it disappears into the clouds. At FAA headquarters, Melissa reviews applications for a new scholarship program. The Margaret Reynolds Memorial Scholarship for Underrepresented Aviators bears her grandmother's name, a woman who dreamed of flying but was denied training in the 1960s because women weren't suited for the cockpit. An industry publication arrives on her desk with her photo on the cover. The headline reads, "The Woman Who Changed Private Aviation's Culture." She sets it aside without reading it. This was never about headlines or personal recognition. It was about ensuring that the next Melissa Reynolds wouldn't have to prove she belonged. 1 year later, Melissa approaches the familiar Teterboro terminal. The morning sun bathes the building in golden light, not unlike that day 12 months ago. But everything else has changed. The terminal manager, a woman of color with a confident stance and alert eyes, greets her at the entrance. "Good morning, Dr. Reynolds. Your aircraft is prepared and waiting." "Thank you, Ms. Daniels," Melissa responds, recognizing the former FAA inspector who now oversees terminal operations. The Reynolds Protocol in action. Not just training, but structural change. Security processing flows smoothly. No random additional screening, no second-guessing her identity or credentials. Just professional courtesy extended equally to every passenger, regardless of appearance. On the tarmac, her G650 gleams in the morning light, the Reynolds Technologies logo freshly painted after a recent maintenance check. At the bottom of the boarding stairs waits her flight crew, headed by Captain Aisha Washington, a young black woman whose posture straightens as Melissa approaches. "Dr. Reynolds, welcome aboard." Captain Washington greets her with professional warmth. "Weather looks excellent all the way to San Francisco. We should arrive 15 minutes ahead of schedule." As they climb the stairs together, Captain Washington adds quietly, "I wanted to thank you personally. I'm a graduate of your scholarship program. Your advocacy changed the trajectory of my career." Melissa pauses, taking in the significance of this moment. "I'm glad to hear it, Captain. How are you finding Atlantic Charter as an employer?" "Transformed," Washington replies. "The old guard resisted at first, but the new policies have created space for people like me to succeed on merit alone." Inside the cabin, Daniel waits with her morning briefing prepared. As she settles into her seat, he provides updates on the day's agenda. "The acquisition team is ready for your arrival. Legal has cleared all remaining hurdles." He hands her a tablet displaying the latest figures. "And Reynolds Technologies stock opened 3 points up this morning following the announcement." "And the graduation ceremony this evening?" Melissa asks. "All arranged. Your speech is loaded on your secure drive. The Academy is expecting record attendance." Melissa nods, glancing at the speech she'll deliver to the graduating class of the National Aviation Academy. The title page reads, "Recognizing Power in All Its Forms." As the jet accelerates down the runway, Melissa gazes out the window. Teterboro grows smaller below, the site of her humiliation now transformed into a symbol of progress. She feels no particular satisfaction about Harrison's downfall. It was never about him specifically, but about the system that enabled him and thousands like him. The aircraft climbs through scattered clouds, banking gently westward. In her mind, she rehearses passages from her speech. Power doesn't always look the way we expect. Sometimes it wears unexpected faces, speaks with unexpected voices. But true authority isn't about being recognized. It's about creating change that outlasts the moment. She thinks about her grandmother, who cleaned airplanes but was never allowed to fly them. About her mother, who worked 3 jobs to put Melissa through engineering school. About every person who faced a barrier and either broke through it or helped build a ladder for those who would come after. The jet levels at cruising altitude, joining dozens of other aircraft traversing the morning sky. Each plane carries its own stories, its own purposes. But now the people flying them and riding in them exist in an industry with clearer expectations and consequences. Not perfect. Change never is at first, but measurably better, verifiably improved, systematically different. Melissa closes her eyes, feeling the gentle vibration of the aircraft around her. The moral of her story forms in her mind, words she'll share with countless others in the years to come. Respect isn't requested, it's required. And sometimes you have to change the whole sky to get it. At Beat Stories, we believe in the power of narratives that don't just entertain but illuminate. Stories that make us think, feel, and perhaps most importantly, act. If this story resonated with you, don't keep it to yourself. Hit that subscribe button to join our community of viewers who appreciate powerful narratives of justice and transformation. Each week, we bring you true stories of people who refused to accept disrespect and changed their worlds in the process. Like this video to signal boost these important conversations. Your simple click helps this story reach others who need to hear it.
What happened today isn't just a story. It's a reminder. Silence protects systems, but courage rewrites them. At Beat Stories, we don't just watch change, we document it. Subscribe for more real stories that challenge power and amplify truth.